right. Thank you for joining for what will be the final interview in the Women Who Code DC Fall Speaker Series. So we're running this event in parallel with Career Services Day, which is an opportunity for the Women Who Code community to receive one-on-one advice around interviews, resume prep, and refining their portfolio in order to enter the tech workforce. This is aligned with Women Who Code's mission of increasing diversity in the tech space. That's something that's really important to the organization, and something the rectification of the gender disparity in tech is a very important organizational mission for us. So in that context, I would like to turn now to introducing our speaker. So we have been fortunate today to hear from a lot of powerful women in tech, and now we're going to speak with Rossella Blatt Vital. She is resilient, proactive, hopeful, and driven by infrangible integrity. Rossella Blatt Vital leads by example. Currently, she's leading as the Director of Data Science and Analytics at Nordstrom. Her work centers on the delivery of the most cutting-edge machine learning tools to innovate in the fashion industry. Rossella is a visionary and extremely passionate about artificial intelligence, the subject of her PhD from Politenico di Milano. Please join me in welcoming Rossella to the Women Who Code virtual stage.
It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rossella. So to kick things off, as the current Director of Data Science and Analytics at Nordstrom, how would you describe the job of one of the data scientists on your team to somebody who has never heard of data science before?
I would say that their job is to marry the art and science of fashion through the power of data, statistics, math, and machine learning. So they use all the techniques from these domains to learn the rules of fashion, if you will, through data, and to emulate the behavior of human beings when it comes to understanding the relationship between fashion concepts, understanding what a user may like in terms of clothing, given their style or their prior purchases. And so they do that by building machine learning models that do a number of things. They recommend the best product for the right customer at the right time. They build outfit models. They use natural language processing to understand text from customers in product reviews, and a number of other very exciting, in my opinion, use of statistics and machine learning in the retail fashion space.
This is fabulous. It's so true that data science is truly an interdisciplinary field, and it's also one with many, many different applications across the customer lifecycle, and just throughout the way that we work and the way that we express ourselves through our clothes. So it's really cool to have you here to speak about these positions. It's also my understanding that Nordstrom is hiring. Is that correct?
We are, yes.
All right. Well, if anybody is watching this and may be interested in a position, they can send their resumes to the email address that will be posted in the sidebar of the chat, and we'll make sure that that resume gets passed along to the appropriate folks at Nordstrom. So, Rossella, what do you look for when you're hiring for a data scientist?
Great question. One of the most important skill, in my opinion, is curiosity, or actually it's not a skill, it's more of an attitude. Curiosity, the desire to learn and to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, which is probably true for any role, but I think for the data science, machine learning space, is incredibly important because of the pace at which change is happening. So you really need to love and want to keep learning the new advances in this space. So that's a very important aspect. I think it's also important to love the technical side of data science as much as the impact and the business side. It's so easy to get lost in the technical rabbit hole of a project and end up building something that maybe it's fantastic from a technical perspective, but is not driving value. And so someone that cares for both is something that we always look for in the people joining our team. From a technical perspective, I think it's very important to have solid foundations to understand the math and the theory behind the methods and to have a vast, a broad and deep understanding of the different tools and approaches, more than understanding the mechanics of the methods or learning one specific tool, because the tools will change and the mechanics at some point will hit a wall. But if someone has understood the foundational pieces, then they're really in control of leveraging them to create value. And last but not least, I always look for someone that loves data science. It's a very fascinating space, but it's also a very hard space. In part because of what we said a second ago, it keeps changing. There is always something new, a new tool, a new advance in the algorithms. And in some cases, the learning curve is very steep. And I think that the only way anyone can get on top of this mountain, but the only way to get there is if you're driven by passion and the true love for data science.
Yes, certainly. I love that response because it touches on so many things that are incredibly relevant to our field. And I've certainly been impressed by the pace of change. It seems the review cycle is very tight and there's always something new to learn, which is really exciting and definitely something that you've seen across your long career, which spans academia, social impact, and now retail. So I'm hoping that you could speak to me a little bit about the different skill sets that have been required across these positions.
Yeah, absolutely. I will start actually with what is common, which is one very simple thing, and it's the love of making an impact. In other words, that's the beauty of data science, in my opinion, and data in general, that can span so many different disciplines, but it can really be meaningful and impactful everywhere. In terms of the differences, academia is very different from the private sector. Academia focuses primarily on pushing the boundaries. So it's more about innovation, thinking outside the box, and doing really something new. Whereas the private sector is focused primarily on driving value, which in some cases happens through innovation, but in other cases, not necessarily. It's more about taking what already exists and knowing how to put it together for the specific reality in order to make an impact to drive whatever form of value is relevant for that company. I worked in the financial sector, which is primarily risk adverse, and so it's a very different way of thinking when prioritizing use cases or choosing the specific methods. In other cases where there is a social component, it's very important to know the trade-off of the different methods and being able to choose, for example, a method that is highly interpretable, or where we can explain what are the costs or control the cost of mispredictions. And then in retail, I think it's a very fascinating space because of the complexity of the ecosystem of services and touch points and the different data. And so far it has been, at least for me, the most exciting of all, because of this big puzzle of pieces that have to fit together in order to really make an impact through data.
Got it. That's great to hear. The impact piece as the cornerstone, certainly, that very much resonates. Well, it certainly sounds like you've had a lot of fun in your career, getting to do different things. So what principles have guided you in terms of your selection of what to do next?
Yeah, I love this question. The first principle has always been knowing what are my priorities in life. And in my case, the priorities were have always been gravitating around my family and the people that I love. And so many decisions that we made were driven by that, or at least it was a very big factor in making decisions. And I have to say, we made many crazy decisions that were not necessarily logical, but we could feel that they were the right decision because of, to your point, using the right principles, or the principles that made sense for us as our compass. The other principle has always been to be open. There are choices that I made in my life, for example, choosing to enter the financial space, the financial industry, which are not logical at all, given the kind of my personality and the type of projects where I like to work. But the openness and curiosity of learning something different, even if it's not your first choice, has always proven to have a very high ROI. I learned so much from all the experiences that I feel that I wouldn't be the person that I am today, the professional that I am today. I wouldn't be where I am today, which I think is I'm lucky to be in the best job I could ever dream to be, for the best company I could ever dream to work for. I couldn't be here if I didn't make all those choices, including the non-obvious one. The other principle has been to choose people more than people and culture, in some cases more than title, money, or other practical aspects. I learned that when you work, when you surround yourself by great people, not only from an intellectual perspective, but also from a human being perspective, their principles, their values. And similarly, when you choose a company that believes in the right value, you end up shining. You end up being very happy at whatever you do. And so these have been the principles for us, and I don't regret a single decision that I made in my life, career-wise.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a journey. And I'm very happy that it's landed you at Nordstrom, where you're explaining that the experience has been so positive for you. So tell me a bit about the culture that you're looking to build at Nordstrom.
Yes. I believe that at the core of a team culture is important to have trust. Whatever the discipline, it's very important that everyone trusts each other, that we care for each other beyond just in a professional way. That similarly we care for what we do, and that we feel proud of our work, that we see it as a craft, and that we really put our heart in everything that we work on. In order to achieve that, collaboration, curiosity, openness, learning from each other has to be baked into our processes. I also think that related to all this comes the openness to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, to feel comfortable, to make mistakes, to learn from them. And in order to do that successfully, you really need to have a culture that rewards those mistakes, that sees them as opportunity for becoming better, becoming more than what we were together. Yeah, I think these are the main characteristics that I really strive to build in our team.
Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of collaboration and openness to continued growth. Those sound like two key, very important aspects of a strong work culture for data scientists.
Yes.
That's truly wonderful. And I am just going to take a pause here. For the audience, if you have questions for Rossella about what it's like to work at Nordstrom, what it's like to serve as a director of data science, or any element of her background, the aspects of this conversation that we've touched on so far, please do drop those questions into Slido. So the link is in the sidebar for you to submit questions for our speaker. So rolling right along here, talk to me a little bit about how your education has prepared you to, have this very interesting storied career across, like leading you up to where you are now.
Yes. I am extremely grateful to how lucky I was to receive the education that I received. In particular, I studied engineering, and I feel that that's really the cornerstone of many successful decisions in my work. The reason is that what I learned from engineering was something that goes beyond a specific discipline or a specific tool or a specific method. Engineering, the studies in engineering taught me how to take a complex problem, break it down into its smallest component, but also abstract the underneath problems and generalize them. And how to build systems based on that. And that has, it's a gift that my education gave me and has accompanied and I had with me for my entire career, and I use it. I have been using it from my very first day of working till today. I was also lucky to discover artificial intelligence and data science during my graduate studies, which allowed me to gain that wide breadth, but also depth in each single method that it's still today the cornerstone of the foundation of my knowledge. And I often think how I admire so deeply all the people that are self-taught and are learning by themselves all the topics in data science. It's a journey. It's overwhelming. I have such a deep admiration for them. I feel I was lucky in having a program that walked me through all these different areas. But I think it's really it had a huge impact in helping me understand what I loved and using it to make an impact. Project after project, role after role, up to where I am today.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So I think that this is a really cool conversation about the value of different kinds of education and how you can take the principles that you've applied from studying engineering early on and use them still to structure your decision making. And I'm hoping too that you can speak a bit more in detail about how you found artificial intelligence and what appealed to you about learning this subject matter particularly.
Yes, my heart always, how do you say, goes faster when I think about literally the day that I discovered artificial intelligence. It was during my graduate studies, and I decided to take an additional class course in artificial intelligence, just by curiosity more than anything else. But during that very first lesson, my mind was blown away by the very different perspective that artificial intelligence brings to the table of trying to emulate human intelligence, especially compared to the traditional statistical methods or obviously the traditional software engineering. I fell in love with how artificial intelligence has this very humble approach of taking inspiration from nature, or at least many of the methods, and how it's almost agnostic to the specific approach. It focuses on the end goal, which is to emulate intelligence, and whatever method can get there, whether it's statistical modeling or evolutionary theory or a connectionist-based approach with neural network, it's okay. It's not married to one specific method. But really the fact this humble approach of taking a step back and looking around us at nature and realizing that nature is incredibly intelligent and that maybe we can learn something from it. And instead of trying to fit everything within one specific model or parameters, maybe we can try one solution, or part of the solution is to take inspiration from that. And I just love that perspective, and that's how it was love at first sight, at least from my end. And that was the beginning of my journey on data science and artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much for sharing that response. I find that to be so exciting and encouraging. Clearly, artificial intelligence is a very dynamic space with a lot of room for growth, and it's a challenge that society will continue to work on for many years to come. So I hope that by sharing this inspirational story and your way of framing the problem, that we can encourage some folks to look into seeing whether this could be an interesting career for them. And with that, I would like to turn now to some questions that have been submitted by the audience. And the first one is, has there been an impact to the data science and analytics teams at Nordstrom due to COVID?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think COVID had an impact on everything. Interestingly, it had one of the impacts that COVID had was that it accelerated our path toward innovation. Because of COVID, the emphasis on digital is much higher and stronger, and the need to recreate the magic of in-store experiences into the digital world has become more urgent than ever. So it didn't change our roadmap and the long-term strategy, but it created a stronger urgency in accelerating it. So from that perspective, it created more excitement around our opportunities of how we can help with data science and machine learning to boost the digital growth and to deliver on our promise of helping customers to feel good and look their best through digital experiences.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good thing to think about. COVID is kind of an accelerator for trends that were already occurring, changes that were underway. Yeah, we'll all, I think, be excited for the day when we have the option, at least, to return to the in-store experience. But in the meantime, how do you make digital as magnetic, as fulfilling as possible? So, yeah. So next question, as a leader, how do you lift up others and ensure diversity and inclusion on your team?
What a beautiful question. First of all, I believe that the best way to lift others is by helping them discover their light inside. We all have some light, some talents. Some of us have already discovered it. Others don't even know that they have it. And one of the biggest fulfillment as a people leader is to help people find that light and then see them shine more and more and blossom. And in order to do that, there is a component of coaching and creating a relationship with a person, discovering them, working with them. But then there is a component of development and helping them focus on the right development areas, creating the opportunities on the job to push themselves at the right level. You don't want them to stretch too much and to break. It's really a constant dance of pushing a little bit, learning, making mistakes, and keep growing in that way. So I think development is really the biggest piece. The diversity piece comes into place in, I like to think about diverse thinking as the most beautiful result of general diversity, the way that we are talking today, primarily like gender and ethnicity, race, and so on. And that's where the cultural piece is really critical, creating an environment where we appreciate, we are empathetic, but we also value different perspectives. And we want to bring them all to the table. And we understand that they are all important and they all need each other to shine more. That's where there is really a big difference. And so I strive, I do my best to create that environment that is conducive to many diverse perspectives coming to the table.
All right. So important for a significant retail operation like Nordstrom to keep this top of mind.
Yes.
What skills are important to work in an environment with a data architecture that's as complex as a retail giant, where the data is coming in across multiple different areas of the business?
Yes, excellent question. I think there are two aspects. The first one is nimbleness in the tools. As a data scientist, we don't need to be experts, data engineering experts or software engineering experts or system experts, but we need to be familiar enough to understand how the data is moving and what is the impact of the data coming from one source or another, or using one tool or another. So having that mental, technical nimbleness of knowing enough without being an expert. The other aspect is collaboration and partnership. None of us can be successful if we work as one, but if we work as a team, that's when we can win. And so building partnership, relationship with counterparts, with colleagues from the other teams is really what makes the project successful.
Those are really good things for a data science team member to keep in mind. The tools are constantly changing and they may be different across different aspects of the business. And interoperability, I think, is the name of the game, both in terms of how you relate to systems and also how you relate to your colleagues and peers.
Exactly.
All right. We'll do a last question and then wrap things up and see if perhaps you have a last piece of advice to give to the community. But before that, are there any ethical concerns related to data algorithms that are used broadly in retail?
From a bias perspective or?
Yeah, there's so many ways, I suppose, that you could take this question. Certainly, if that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, I can't think of anything on top of mind that that I would be concerned as of now. But I do know that we are discussing more and more how can we push ourselves in making sure that there is no bias in our models, that there are no, I guess, bias, but in general, how can we think about our algorithms from that lens, which is a field, it's an emerging field, and there have been many progresses. There has been a lot of progress recently, but it's not ingrained yet in the industry. We want to be ahead of that. We don't want to wait for rules or regulations or other companies to set that standard because we think it's just the right thing to do. We don't know exactly how to do it, which is also the beauty, I guess, of new innovative areas. But we know it's important, and we are starting to define our game plan to make sure that we can trust every single algorithm from a social, moral perspective. And obviously it goes without saying that anything that we know touches very sensitive data. For that, we already have solutions in place, but it's more other algorithms like the recommendation systems. Is there any bias in those that we're not aware of? And if so, what do we want to do with that?
Certainly, that's a big challenge for a young industry like data science, where the standards are not yet in place. And so it's up to leadership to determine what that looks like at an organizational level. So yeah, it's great to hear your perspective on that. Trying to get out ahead of any challenges that may come up around these questions of bias in data sets and in the way the algorithms work out. All right, so we are wrapping up for the afternoon. It's been a really lovely series of conversations, concluding with this one, where we've been so fortunate to hear from Rossella Blatt Vital about her experience as the Director of Data Science and Analytics at Nordstrom. So thank you so much for joining us on the Women Who Code stage. And thank you to all of the folks who dialed in and offered questions. It's just been a great learning experience all the way around. So with that, Rossella, do you have any advice that you would like to offer our event participants as part of Career Services Day to either like help them to find jobs in tech or to find their voice in their organization? Really just open to wherever you would like to take things to wrap things up.
I was actually going to advise to find their voice. Just like you said, I think that's the most important thing. There is no wrong decision career-wise when you discover who you are, when you discover what you love, and you pursue that. And you accept that at some point you may stop loving that, but you will discover something else. The journey will bring you to something else that you love. So find your principles and follow them, marry them, and I can guarantee you'll be happy career-wise.
Thank you. I'm so glad we're aligned on how to close things and really like the quintessential core piece of advice to offer to our epic ladies and supporters who've dialed into this call, which is find your voice. So thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I hope that you have found this to be as immensely valuable as I have. So thank you, Rossella.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.